Oh, there we go. I had to concentrate. I was getting all scrambled and clicking on the wrong things. And oh my goodness, all a mess. All a mess. Hello, Erica. Ah, just good to have you here. That's good to have you here. What a joy. How are you, Erica?
I'm doing really well. How are you two?
Yes. I feel like a bit of sanity.
Finally.
Yes. Well, okay. I mean, not. It's not being disparaging towards Beena. Beena keeps me sane, but other than that, I really do feel that. I really had this very strongly. I was thinking early this morning, oh, today's Erica Day. And I said, oh, good, some sanity, So, yeah, it's very powerful.
I like it.
Yeah, that was before Beena came on. I think I'm going to share with Erica my little poem, yes? I think that.
Oh, yes.
Did you write a new one?
Oh, I've written a whole bunch. I've been very prolific. Well, there's a logic to it. So yeah, it's all set up here now. Yeah, I'm just inspired. All right, let me get it set up a bit better. These are poems that go with pictures.
Okay.
Yeah. Say that again.
I was asking Beena how she's doing.
Oh, I'm doing well. Working with some art exercises, which was a different experience because our usual perception of few things, natural phenomena are different. But when some other artist presents a different perspective on that, and then you have to follow that perspective instead of just your own perception of any natural phenomena like a spring or rain or anything. So that was a different exercise because my idea of a spring was different. And then they said, okay, no, you have to watch this video, which was a very, very unusual kind of dark dance. And then Rite of Spring, the name of that song, that dance number was. And then I have to create a painting out of that, which was like, wow, seriously. So I did, which was a good experience. But again, it provides an opportunity to go deeper, to actually look things from an artist's point of view. Yes, everybody is an artist. We all can see that. But when you specifically focus on something with a very specific lens, then you actually explore something unexpected. Always more, yes, but unexpected, yes. This is brilliant. Yes.
Oh, I was going to say, especially for us, because we've trained ourselves to look for moreness, to unhook from the limitations and the boundaries of what Erica so specifically unhooked from last time, expectation. And when you have that freedom, moreness comes, right? So this is part of what we're doing, and it's obviously from the intent of wave impeccability, but now we're just applying it we're utilizing that skill, let's put it this way. Well, at least it was for the exercise, but I didn't actually do the exercise. But now that I'm thinking what I'm going to share, it was completely disconnected to the exercise because it came up the art came before, the poem after, but either way it's not connected, but I can post it as that anyway. So, but it's not connected, but still. So what I'm doing is, I'm creating the art, but then for the description of the art, when I started to say it, when the first couple I just wrote, but I'm sharing at least the way I do a discernment and an insight, which really starts to reflect the deeper philosophy that's underlying everything, way of impeccability and A+ and all this stuff. But then I said, that it started to go, because it was so, the nature of it started to be sort of in the poetry. I might as well just write poems. So now, instead of describing the art like what I'm seeing, I'm just writing poems and letting the art bring the poem. And this is very powerful. So that's what I'm sharing now. This is the very last one that I've done. I got a whole bunch of these, but anyway, what am I doing? Screen share. Oh, yes. Okay. So now you're going to see the art and then the poem. Right? The name of the poem is Traversing the Cosmic Portal into Yearness.
Okay.
All right. Out of void we came, idea we'd been, conception we became, intent we imbued, as nascent awareness fed knowing. We became, we came, we crossed. From nowhere we had come, perhaps to nowhere we will go, perhaps. Yet into yearness we emerge, we traverse, we step into honest, and here we express our beingness. Now we ask, do you remember?
I love that.
Isn't that something? Isn't
It is.
that something?
And it
Yeah.
goes really well with the art.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It enhances the art. It's a standalone poem, but it also enhances the art, and the art enhances the poem. This is the intent. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I'm glad you hear that. There
Yeah.
was another punctuation I had to change somewhere. Oh, it looks like it's, I'm putting, yeah, it is a full stop. All right. Uh, so yeah, I'm really enjoying this. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
All right. All right. So now, since we're on this, I'm going to show you another one, just because this one made me think of you, and yeah, this one. But hang on. Let me go. Let me not go there first, because I don't want you to read it before I show the picture. Well, it's the background picture, but I want to show the picture itself. The full picture. So, um, right. It is. Which would be the best shape? I think this one. All right. This one is kind of interesting because you can rotate it, and it works in all the rotations. Anyway, I prefer it in this one, but all right. So this one is, yeah, Eagle Wave Spirit of Mounting Power. The title, yeah, Eagle Wave Spirit of Mounting Power. You call, I come. You summon, I form. You need, I empower. You ask, I conjoin. You are, I am. We are, we are. We are a more so deep its core. I'm there, I'm here, in you, of you, from you. All I ask is impeccable trust.
I love that one too.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't have the picture showing nicely, but yeah. So I thought this is that, I feel that we tend to neglect in ourselves somewhat this, spirit of moreness, mounting power, that it's there in us. We just kind of need to come at, you summon, I form. But if we do this, you need, I empower. If we realize that it's there, that we can summon, we can call, we can ask, we can need it, right? By, need as in an ask need, right? Then it will come. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is what I saw in you, Magical Erica, the very first time I heard you share.
Well, I appreciate that.
I mean, literally the very first time. Sometimes a little bitty the thing comes, but the first Erica empowered. It's like, whoa, it came right then. And I knew it was a prescient understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was an exploration of taking the what I was seeing and seeing past what was then into the moreness. So I knew what it was, which was very cool, and I was really enjoying this part of myself to be able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Now that poem, what I was just writing, right? This spirit power, or whatever you want to call it. All right, wave, because of the wave thing, but that's it. Our deeper inner spirit. It's kind of like a wave, but you've got to summon that wave. Now, for me, it sort of happened inadvertently. But when I was writing this poem, I was thinking of you, and to think that, if we do this more deliberately, there's a matchness involved, right? We certainly can. We just have to be aware it's there. We may not know what we're going to summon, but there is something to summon. Yes? Make
True.
sense?
It does.
Okay. 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 I mean, I've got a couple more, but for another time, maybe. They're fun. They're fun, though. They are fun. They are fun. Let me see if there's another one that's appropriate to you. No. Okay. Yeah. I don't even remember what this one is. Okay. All right. But anyway, you get the idea, though. So it's a good exercise also, because my intent here is to elucidate the pictures, but also an intent to share moreness from me, to share that wave, right? So that if you're looking at this as a painting, you're getting a lot more than just a painting. The painting can add to the poem can add to the painting. They can both stand alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, because that, to me, my art is me. My art comes from my discernment, my awareness, my understanding, my ability to extrapolate, to curate, to be connected, to see moreness. All of that is part of it. No? So, yeah, it's just an interesting exercise, particularly since, you also are connected to art. And I think this is really useful and powerful to re-examine our art in different ways, to see art not as a visual medium, but as an expression of selfness, of moreness.
Right.
And there, in that poem, the one that I'm thinking, well, both of them were connected to you. When we really tap into that and allow it to come, like that little line of, now we ask, do you remember? I wrote the poem and I was done with the poem. And then it just came, and it transforms the entire poem. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that, I like that. And also that just an understanding of what makes things work and not work. This is very powerful. Most of it is too, Jayne, the champion of capital B practice. That's what's involved. It's capital B practice. It's absolutely, you've just got to do these things, and the more you do them, the more they come. It's very powerful, very, very powerful. All right. What have you been doing, Jayne? What have you been thinking? What have you been feeling?
Lots of things. I'm continuing on in my second book from Eckhart and really enjoying it. He continues to blow my mind with his, what did Beena say? Mind blowing does. So,
Right.
yeah, it's.
What is the second book called, and is it published post or pre Power of Now?
It's post The Power of Now. It's called A New Earth, and it's
A new
New Earth.
A New Earth. Interesting.
So good. There's, and oh my gosh, I feel like there's been a million and one things that have come up since I talked with you guys last, but yeah, just really, really, I think one of the biggest things is it's amazing to me. I was texting my mom this morning about it because she's reading the book too. And I was saying, not only does he present things that are really simple but really impactful, that are sort of new ideas for it's so fast. The way that he shares it, it comes across as something that it's like a reconnection for you. It's not like a brand idea. It's like,
yes,
this is something that I knew, but I just didn't connect to it.
Making the obvious obvious.
And it's so big, and that always blows my mind. But then he also, there's all through along the way, he will touch on things that I have thought about or come to on my own.
Yes.
Or own
Yes.
thinking or whatever,
Yes.
and he will touch on it in such like really, really specific terms.
Nice.
And it's
Nice.
so fascinating when that happens. And I was
Yes.
saying to my mom this morning that it reminds me of in Elizabeth Gilbert's book that I read earlier this year, Big Magic, where she talked about how for her, ideas are just energy coming from Moreness, basically. And so, it's not that an idea is necessarily yours. You are more the conduit for the idea than the
Yes.
idea. And I really experience that when I come across things like this, where I have come to some understanding or knowing or conclusion as a result of really thinking things through, and then someone else shares it in really specific, really similar ways, and you go, there you go, that is a universal idea. That's just proof to me that all of this is connected, and that those knowings aren't coming from me, really. They're coming from something beyond me. And it's really exciting and cool. So that's been fun. But yeah, man, there's just so much in both of these books that have been really cool, mind-blowing does for me.
Yes. Yes. And this is the magic. This is the magic. You are recognizing Erica.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is it. This is, and it can be a bit scary sometimes, even. I remember reading Nietzsche, and I had thought something through to the end, and I saw the exact words in Nietzsche.
Right.
Exact words. It's like, hey, how are you plagiarizing my brain from the past? It's like, come on now, and this is what I found too, that when you think things through to the end, some points are simply inevitable conclusions. That's it. What else are you going to come up with? That's what they resolve to. It's kind of like, when you're figuring out some complicated math formula or equation. There's only one way you can go. All right. Sometimes there are different paths, but you can, right? Um, I have a math theorem named after me, by the way. Yeah, Greef's theorem. Yeah. Well, my math teacher named it. He said,
Oh, yes.
yeah, to calculate the area of a kite. He said, but nobody's ever done it in this way before. He was very impressed. He was so happy. I thought it was kind of lame, but all right. Anyway, just by the way, Soul's homemade,
Looks good.
Yeah. You see Beena? Anyway. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Beena says, I don't cook. And I said, no, that's cooking, but it's made in the bread machine. I still count it as cooking. Sorry, I do.
And yesterday we were discussing something very serious. I don't know what was. It was like, okay, we were trying to create more out of it, and then suddenly Syl's bread machine start creating sounds, and it was like she just wants to be included. Okay, yes, you are. So every now and then we were saying, oh yes, we understand.
Fun stuff. Anyhow, so this point though that I'm making, that when we think things through to the end, we come to a conclusion that's there, right? It's not anybody's, it's there. It's the conclusion. It's like that when it comes to math, the theories and the formulas. That's it. You end up with an answer. And this is very powerful. And this is what you are seeing, right? Now, understand something, Erica. This is a very, very, very important point. It might be obvious, but I just made a doorstop, by the way. Cut one. My slice didn't come out so well. It came out. No. But very important that you are recognizing those does, and they are does to you.
Right.
Obvious is obvious to you. This is not necessarily what happens. Yes. Right. I see this time and time again, where people are reading the same things, but what they get out of it is not what comes out of it, right? So it's absolutely fascinating how this perception varies according to the experience.
Mhm.
Yes. So Eckhart is sharing profound stuff, but some people will read him and it's like, oh, so mumbo jumbo, whatever, and none of it will penetrate and connect. Yeah. So I'm trying to give you a compliment that you might not give yourself,
No,
to understand that because of all the work you put into thinking things through to the end, it changes the reading.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
came
So
to that conclusion
yeah.
as well when after I read The Power of Now, I was really appreciating the fact that um, I think prior to all the work that I've done, the book, if I had read this book, years ago, it would have been really interesting to me, but it absolutely wouldn't have had the same impact on me that it
Correct.
is right
Correct.
now
Correct.
because of the work
Correct.
done. And it was, I think I told you
Right.
guys, but it was so funny. I was reading, I bought a hard copy of the book after I listened to it in Audible.
Oh,
I was looking at the reviews of the book. I was on Amazon and I just happened to, look at the reviews and I was dying laughing because it was literally, I mean, it would just ping pong back and forth between
yes.
like 5 star. This has completely changed my life. This book has
Right. Right.
absolutely shifted the way I think about everything. Or 1 star. This is the worst book I've ever read. It's
Fascinating.
it makes
Fascinating.
sense. And
Yes.
they would always say, the 1 star reviews would always say something like, this was recommended to me, or I heard
Yeah. Yeah.
about this on, some show or whatever. And I had really high hopes, and then I read it and none of it makes sense. And, here's all these problems with it. And there was one of them that I was just like dying laughing. The review had a picture of the book in a trash can. And the reviewer was like, this is where this belongs because this just makes
That's quite genius in a way. That's quite
I laughed so hard, but it is
wow.
it
Yeah.
is really fascinating. And Eckhart actually addresses that in A New Earth because
Oh,
now had, blown up and become really popular. In the beginning of The Power of Now. Oh,
it's right, but it's not showing.
in the beginning of
There we go.
there we go. Okay. In the beginning of The Power of Now, or of A New Earth, he says this book has a lot of really useful, um, basically, really good stuff in it.
Yeah.
But if you are not at the point where you're ready to hear
Yeah.
this, then it's
Yeah.
not going to make sense to you.
Yeah.
And he said something like, this book isn't meant to be interesting. It's not meant to be like,
Yes.
it's not meant to be interesting.
Yes. Yes.
This is like practical, useful
Yes.
stuff. And you're either going to get it or you're not. And it's okay. If you're not ready for it, that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But it was so funny to see that so clearly reflected in the reviews. It was like, it was just total opposite end of the
Yeah.
spectrum. People were either like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever read, or this is awful. I can't believe anybody recommends this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's probably why I have not yet published book 1 of the Biala series.
right.
It's ready to go. And I engaged the publisher and everything, did all the editing and everything on it. But then the Out BS book came along.
Oh, yeah.
And so instead of that, all the resources went into publishing that. And then obviously I could have still done it after that, but I sort of, went with the attunement to say, okay, now it's not quite the time.
Right.
I do feel the same way. And I wrote an extensive preface on frame of perception to say, this book doesn't have the usual heroes and, the villains are, indulgence and lack of awareness and things like that. So you need the appropriate frame of perception to read the work.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay.
I need to go for a few minutes and then I'll come back.
Okay.
So,
See you soon, Beena. See you soon. See you soon. This is really cool stuff, though, in terms of what you are doing and engaging in. Because to me, your reading right now is confirming Eureka.
Yeah.
Doing, right? You're applying. That's the other difference. One thing to read and recognize. It's another thing to read, recognize, and apply, and connect, and utilize. This is very different, right? So it's very powerful. I am looking absolutely forward to the next stage, which is you writing.
Well.
Yeah. I think, or expressing Eureka-ness in all the different ways. May not be writing, maybe something else, maybe art, maybe the combination. But I do feel that, in writing, when I listen to your takeaways and that, they'll probably be very different now. But if you set about to really express some points, this is going to be potent. I feel that you are going to write Glennon Doyle type works. Or you could, not that you would, that you could.
Right.
Similar style and vibe and connectivity, rather than coming from an Eckhart type of perspective. You see what I mean? Because I can't see you doing this, that, okay, Eckhart is kind of telling you what's going on in a sense, yes? Where Doyle is sharing a personal experience and you pull value from that, yes?
Right, yeah, Eckhart does a lot of that as well.
Oh, he does? Oh, okay. I'm not that familiar with it. Oh, he does. Okay, well, that's different then. Okay, so then it could be, some blend between the two. But I do feel, though, that when you start, it's going to come out Eureka-ness. And, you have so much to share. You may not think so, and there may not be no real pressure or intent or attunement to do so. But for your own value, this would be viable.
Yeah.
You could really just go through all your notes and pull that out and put them together and say, okay, here's my journey.
Right.
And put it into a book form. It's going to take a lot of work. It'll be a tremendous amount of work, but it'll be an incredibly powerful work, because in doing that, you take a quote from your notes, and then you write up, okay, at this stage, I was thinking this, I was feeling this is where I was. And you see what I mean? And then you tie it into a story, a thread of Erica's journey. And, there's a title kind of a thing too, the idea. And this is powerful stuff. This is powerful stuff. I don't know if you have any interest whatsoever in doing this, but I'm just saying, as a personal exercise, it's powerful, whether you publish it or not. But, certainly would be powerful to publish also. And to as a motivational speaker, I think you'd be fantastic.
Wow, I appreciate it.
Yeah. When you elucidate, and especially when you are going to actually give a talk, you write it out, you practice it, you refine it, you polish it, your that innate sense of that diligence and impeccability will come through, and it will be a big deal. So, all right.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. And, I share this not because I think these are shoulds, obviously not, to do, or even recommendations. I simply share them to share my perspective that I believe these are options, but not just any old option, but absolutely very, very viable options.
Right.
The only thing that makes a difference is your desire to do this.
Right.
Now, for me, I seldom have personal desires. It all comes from attunement. Right? If it gets expressed on me, then I'm very motivated. If not, I don't care one way or the other. Right? And it can change just like that. The moment I have that attunement behind it, I'm super motivated, and I can spend inordinate amounts of time and energy and effort on something.
Right.
So it's all dependent on that. I don't know how much that's affected. And this is something I do want to ask before we get going. It's come up a couple times now. It comes up regularly. Materializations and I refuse to call them manifestations, but materializations of attention and focus, and somewhat loosely connected also to intents. And they've been really jumping out. Now, normally I see them in others, but I've been noticing a little bit myself, right? In terms of stuff I've been focusing on, okay, yeah, it pops and all this. And it's like, wow, really anomalous and interesting. But it's the mechanism, right, that is interesting to me. That I see how when there's attention and focus, stuff comes, but
Right.
it's not something I can utilize deliberately.
Interesting.
Which this is very puzzling to me.
Right.
And I need to explore that. So I do want to ask you, in your life, how are there any things, or in going forward, to pay attention to when you are paying attention and focusing on something, and when it comes, and the process and the mechanism.
Okay. Are you asking if there are things that I have materialized or that I want to materialize, or
That you have, right? So, yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure there are. I'm not thinking of anything off the top of my head. My mom is the master of materialization. I'm not sure she realizes that she is, but she is an absolute master of materialization.
Right. It's inadvertent in her case.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I tried very hard, by the way, to make her more acutely aware of this. Yeah.
I do too.
Stay connected, for heaven's sake,
Right. I'm trying to think specifically if there's something I can think of that I feel like was a direct result of sort of focused attention.
Well, what about books? Books coming your way?
Yeah.
I'm just prompting, to get the brain a bit fired up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are, but I'm not thinking of anything where I sort of had that intent of I'm trying to materialize something.
Oh. Right. I was saying, though, not where there is intent, but where you were just paying attention and things came.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there have been. I don't know.
Let me give you an example.
My brain's not thinking of anything off the top.
It's difficult. It's very difficult. Okay, so those things that I showed you now, the art and the poems, this is where I'm listing them, right? And this is the screen, right? You see all of them listed here and so on. So I was saying to Beena, though, that, I'm not screen sharing. Sorry. Yeah. So I was saying to Beena, this is not it. Why is this up here? There we go. So this is where you listed, see, add new artworks, and this is all the ones that I've now listed, and I list them in all the, all right, the technical is not important. But I was saying to Beena, and it came from something else, that, in order to get noticed, you really have to come under the attention of the curators. And because they do have, if you go as a buyer, you get a free service. The curator will say, what are you after? And they will just help you. They help you to find stuff, right? So I was saying this to Beena, and I wanted to update my profile. It didn't need to, it turns out, but, to say that my art comes from all of me, and, it's not because when I first put the profile, I hadn't written the poems yet specifically, but I did have the intent to write about the art and have this be a part of what I am putting out there, right? That you're getting a package deal, really. You're getting the philosophy, the Moreness, and the painting. But then it turned into the poetry. All right, you're still getting the philosophy and the Moreness, but now you're getting it in poem form too. So I want to update, and when you look at these here, okay, my addresses, photographing your artwork. I imagine this is just an article on doing that because it's a very important part. And curator notes. Well, I haven't had any interaction with the curator, and I'm not doing this, as a buyer. So okay, I never just assumed this was just to take notes, But then, for whatever reason, yesterday I thought, well, let me just click on this, right? And what it is really, it's a questionnaire that you fill in to say, to get the attention of the curators. And I was talking about this with Beena to say, in order to really jump up my things, because it's not only for, the commissions for private clients and corporate and hotel, this is what I was specifically thinking of in the art to do stuff that is appropriate for corporate, because I'm aware of that anyway. But the point is that here's a way to get the attention of the curators. And I had no idea this was here. I mean, it's been sitting there for a while now, and I just, ignored it. And for some weird reason, I just clicked on it. There was no real logic to click on it. And I did. And then I discovered this. But it's on the same day, immediately after, at least a couple of hours after, I specifically had said, what I need now is to somehow, or hope for that you find the attention of the curators. Because, well, not only I didn't even know that they do the service, but I was just thinking that they can add you into featured or recommend you or whatever, right? Because this happened with YouTube. We were talking about the same, well, in a roundabout way. And then I showed Beena, one of my videos has like over 1,000 views, and said, well, I don't know why. I thought it had been picked up by one of the places that I share the stuff to, but it turned out that YouTube has been recommending it. And then, recommendations. I never even thought of that. And then right on, the same day, later in the day, somebody comments, and their comment was, finally, a recommendation that actually is worthwhile.
Yeah.
I very seldom get comments. I mean, almost never. I mean, the only comments I've had is a few from Ryan and Sher maybe and stuff like that, right? And one or two from people, but they were like random comments, like they just said, oh, or some weird stuff I can't even understand. So, but, over the years now that I've had YouTube, and I've had YouTube going quite far back, maybe 10 comments.
Right.
On that day that we are focusing on YouTube, putting it up as a recommendation, I get a comment specifically saying this and appreciating the work. That's too anomalous. I can't ignore this, right? Attention again. So now I've got that plus this thing with the curation and the arts were getting noticed, right? Because it's really not about curator notes. It's for them to know what you do.
Right.
They obviously have a market. It's quite interesting, their questionnaire. They have I thought they would have a market for corporate and hotel art, which is, it's stuff that doesn't take energy, that's kind of neutral and, doesn't push a message, etc. Which is what I've been making an effort to come up with and create. So just fascinating. Yeah. And it all connects together. That's what I mean. I didn't have an intent to do this. Well, in a roundabout way, I mean, I have an intent to say, well, it would be nice to get noticed, but I can't really make it happen other than sort of hope it happens, right? I suppose you could set an intent to have it happen, but I was more paying attention, and then it comes. Yes, the mechanism. It's like, all right, well, very cool. That's what I was saying about attention, how it comes. Same thing with the YouTube recommendations. There's very little I can do to affect that. Yes, I can pay more attention to my tags, I guess, and the hashtags, which I have been doing. But other than that, I didn't even really sort of think of it as a thing. So very interesting, though, very interesting. This is what I mean now. I'm making the point about attention and how it can materialize without us really thinking so, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so anything come to mind now with these examples? That's what I was using examples here to try and stimulate you a bit.
I'm trying to think of specific examples. I mean, I know that is the case and that has happened. I mean, I feel like that sort of happens a lot to me with.
It does. Yeah.
I forget forget the term, but where because you've been thinking about something, you start seeing it everywhere, you start noticing it everywhere. I can't remember what the term for that is, but that happens to me quite often where if something captures my attention in a specific way, then I start noticing that, or it, just starts coming up everywhere. That happens pretty often for me.
But I'm paying attention to that, and I do. I'm very scientific in this, that I don't want to see things and believe it's something that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
In that mechanism where we are just noticing more, this is just focused emphasis.
Right.
However, yes, we were emphasizing being recommended, or the recommendations, because when I looked, I never did this before. On that video with 1,000, Beena was talking about, oh, if you get 1,000, you get more, you get noticed in something she heard from a cousin. So I went into the analytics and actually looked where this, because I thought this had been boosted by one of the, like, I don't know, Mix or Flipboard or whatever. I share my stuff today. I don't think it makes much difference, but occasionally I've had it, like one thing got picked up on Quora and people really focused a lot on it, and then it boosted the views on the website. It was significant, a big spike. So I'd assumed that because this was an article, a video I made about the Bushman, one of my Bushman stories. So I thought, oh, that got picked up. But then I went into the analytics and I said, oh, no, it's from the recommendations on YouTube. That's why. It's because 1,000 is a lot of views for me. I mean, it drops off very suddenly, and then, I've got it in like 50s, and then it goes down to nothing. I don't get much action on YouTube. I don't pay much attention to it either. Anyway, but the fact that I got a comment, finally a recommendation that's worthwhile. They said, more, you guys really got it going on and all this. But the comment itself is unusual.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it's a comment on recommendations is doubly unusual. I usually look for like a triple thing. Yeah. So it's like, okay, yeah, I'm doing this same day, etc. So now I can say this is not just me noticing stuff and picking out this one comment out of thousands. No, it's one comment out of none.
Mm-hmm.
So it's significant, right? I mean, I can say statistically, from a pure point of this is now you've got to treat it as something different, right? I'm very careful about that. Mm-hmm. Now, the other reason I mention this is because these things are difficult to remember. They come and they go. Unless you write them down, they're gone. But when we have it in mind, we notice when it comes, and that's the time to share it and mention it, right? So when you do notice something, if it's not close to a day that we're going to be on, write it down. Right? These are powerful to remember because they start training the brain to be aware that they do exist, because we tend to treat them as something that's not part of our reality. They're outside of our reality, and they shouldn't be. See? So that's why we forget them, because, well, it's an anomaly. It's not part of my regular reality. So I only see what I expect my reality to be, and I want to change that. Yes? This should be default. That is fluid reality. It's where we're aiming, where we're heading for longer term, no?
Makes sense.
All right. Brilliant. All right. So we were on slide 50. I thought we said no.
54 is what I had written down.
54. All right. I know it was close to 50. All right. Very good. Right. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Let me make this full screen. All right. Will you read, please, Erica?
Okay. How would you...
Sorry, before you start. What makes dry bread when you've just baked it? It comes out a little on the dry side. It's almost like it's a day or two old.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Had that happen, but I don't usually use a bread maker, so I don't know.
Yeah. All right. No worries. I thought maybe you know.
I don't.
I just got to put more liquid in, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Could be. Okay. How would you explain a capital P practice to someone?
I want to hear this.
Interesting. Well, let me think. How would I explain capital P practice to someone?
Start anywhere and see what comes.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I'm collecting my thoughts. I was trying to think of different examples of when I've really felt like I have been applying practice in a way. I guess part of what comes to mind is, I mean, related to what we had been talking about last week with expectations and letting go of expectations. For me personally, a big rethinking of practice was for a good portion of my life, because of perfectionistic tendencies. There was really no intentional practice phase for me. I sort of assumed that I was supposed to be going from total beginner to perfecting something, mastering something immediately.
Yeah,
And
because you had that as a small child.
yes. And so I guess for me, part of practice is sort of letting go of that expectation of immediate mastery, or, it's allowing yourself to do something without any particular expectations of the outcome. You're just sort of doing,
Yeah.
going through the motions in preparation for whatever comes. So I think that for me, a lot of practice has been letting go of that specific expectation of whatever it is that I'm doing, that the outcome of whatever it is that I'm doing is going to be some particular way.
Right.
That's a big part of
So
practice.
I'm hearing that an implied intent or focus or understanding is that for you, capital P practice is engaging in exploration.
For sure. Absolutely. And
And by
not only engaging in exploration, but sort of allowing exploration.
yes, yes. And so I said engaging because I'm trying to say a broad term that will, yes, absolutely. Right. So allowing it to happen, letting it come, experiencing it. Right. So for you, capital P practice is all of what may be connected to exploration. We won't use a specific term, right? I was trying to find a broad one, but yeah. Okay. So exploration, big deal.
I think engaging is a great one, but I just,
yeah. No, I love what you say. Yeah. Okay. That's right.
It also part of engaging with something is sort of acknowledging that it's a thing. And that was part of practice for me, was just the acknowledgement, not only the engagement with exploration, but acknowledging that exploration is a thing and it's okay for it to be.
Yes. Yes. Now, almost always when I need to see you. I don't know where you went, but you went very tiny. I couldn't see you. Oh, my little bar got pushed up too high. Almost always when we engage in an activity, even if we don't have a specific intent to doing it, at least not consciously, if we think about it a little bit, there is that implied intent that is automatically goes along with it. So somebody would say to you, oh, Jayne, you're engaging in capital P practice. This is exploration. To what end?
Yeah.
It's not only just for the pureness of exploration. There's the implied that, well, I'm looking for improvement in some way.
Right.
Right. But also, would you say, So that's implied. That's what I hear, that this engaging in the practice. Yes, my technique, my methodology is exploration, but even though I'm not specifically saying I want to improve, it's implied. Yes. So the intent to improve is there. Also, I would say if we think about it, it's an intent to improve incrementally, or at least not in rapid, giant one steps, right? So it's not necessarily tiny steps as in incremental, but it is a change and improvement that's a bit more spread out over time. Right. I just call it incremental change, for want of a better word, right? Because sometimes it can be small, sometimes there's big increments, but still they're in increments, right? So this is a big deal, though, to understand that capital P practice is exactly that. We aren't looking to just learn something, apply it, and jump from one state of being to another. It is that we are looking for a change over time to some extent, right? And through the doing, we get to understand where to go next.
Right.
Right. And that's what the exploration is. I have no idea myself what is involved. So I have to explore and be open to those surprises of where to go next. And the path can go any which way. And this is the magic of capital P practice. It becomes a joy. It becomes a thing of discovery. And you say, I never would have thought to do this. Yes. And so now you've got real magic that's come into your life. Yeah.
True.
Very cool. So capital P practice is that freedom of mind to connect to a moreness that we cannot imagine yet. But it's making space for it, right? To tie this all back to where we're at, making space. Yes. You've got to make space for those newnesses, that exploration, those surprises, those jumps to come. Yes. That's what you're doing. So capital P practice in the way you described it, particularly because you said exploration is your focus. When we unravel that a little bit, or funnel it, we say, oh, that's what you're doing. You're making space for moreness. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So capital P practice for Erica Jayne is very specifically making space for moreness. Yes. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, it's very powerful. It's very powerful. So I'm also applying, capital H hearing a little bit here, to put this all together. Right. Oh, there you go. Now I can see it. All right. Now my little profile windows were too small, but I do like to see you. The interactive feedback is a big deal for me. Okay. Yeah. All right. Please read the next one there.
Okay. Sorry. Give me just a second. Okay. How comfortable are you with another being uncomfortable, awkward, stumbling, struggling to express, and feeling bothered by their stupidities and awful truths, etc.? What can you do to make space which smooths out and ameliorates all the discomfort and makes it a no problem and okay environment?
Good question.
Interesting.
Mm.
It's interesting. I think my initial tendency for the first question would be to say that I think I sort of get pulled into other people struggling. However, with the addition of the second question, it makes me think that I might be better at that than I'm giving myself credit for.
I think so.
I think
you've become so. Yeah.
I think something that I am getting better and better at doing is, like, for example, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is with art. I'm always saying that art, like applying any sort of like labels or
yeah
or whatever to art, is it's just sort of like it's just my mind just doesn't work in that way. And
Yes.
I think for me,
Yes.
that's a big part of this, that I like if I see someone who's made a piece of art that looks sort of unskilled or looks unskilled to me, or appear, or if they're expressing, well, I'm really struggling and this doesn't really look whatever, that doesn't bother me at all,
No.
because for
No.
me it's just a part of the journey of expression, and it doesn't make me uncomfortable, it doesn't make me
Right.
awkward, and I don't feel a pressure to do something to like change it. I don't feel like anything needs to be changed. um, so I think I am getting better and better at not, just because another person may be uncomfortable with their own expression, that I'm getting better and better at that, not making me feel like I need to change something
Correct.
about the situation.
And also, in the case of art, that's a supposed to that is being asked for.
Right.
The person sharing theirs, they're asking you to react in a way that you're supposed to, correct? And you say, no, sorry. What happens when we interact with somebody who's sharing their stuff? Don't they typically do exactly the same thing? They ask you for a supposed to reaction.
Yeah.
But you've said, no, I can't. If you're going to indulge in your stuff, that's on you. Don't ask me to also condone this. Sorry, you being a knucklehead, this is your doing. I'm going to observe it, yes. But that's it. I cannot share your perspective, your view, your delineation, your identification, your naming of this. Sorry, it's like art. You're saying it is this, it is that. No, it's just art. It's just expression. Yes.
Mhm.
It's not a particular expression. And this is how we make that space now, right? We unhook from the conventional, typical, expected
Mhm.
uh, assumption and expectation. And we get into discovery mode, like capital B practice. We say, I'm going to be open to see what is coming, and I'm specifically looking for moreness, not lessness, right? So now I've automatically zoomed out a little bit and detached a bit from it, yes?
Right.
Yeah. So that's the key, though, is not the key here is to not identify with their labeling, same as in art. I find this so fascinating how this just came up in you, the art example, right? Because the art example is all about labeling,
Right.
yes, and buying into labels. So what you do with people would be a reverse expectation.
Mm.
I have no expectations, but I'm actually putting out to you that there are no expectations of you. I'm not buying into your expectation modality. Yes. So now they because not only do they sometimes want you to do this, but they think they should push that they should want you to behave in conventional ways. When you remove that, now they're sort of left to their own devices. And now, because there's this underlying implication, what are you talking about? What is the point of this? Well, the point of this is to get some resolution. Well, now it's shifted from a moment ago. The point and purpose was commiseration and, victim and feeling sorry for myself and getting attention. Now it's shifted to resolution. So now we've made space for a whole other world, no? We've taken that leap, that sideways jump out of the box.
Mhm.
It's really, really powerful. But I'm thinking of this from your point of view, that, you don't get sucked in through inappropriate empathy.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
By reverse expecting.
Right.
Very powerful.
It
Yeah.
is. It really
I
is.
mean, there's expectations. And when we see how, when we turn it upside down, when we invert it, as it were, we make space suddenly.
Mhm.
Right? Isn't that what space is? The absence of expectations.
Yeah.
But we want to do this like, okay, I don't have any expectations, but I've got to project the no expectations onto you.
Right.
That's how we make space. Yes. Very
Absolutely.
powerful. Same thing I'm doing personally, but now I'm actually putting it onto you.
Right.
Right. Very, very cool. It's one of the few times that we can ethically push something onto somebody. Same thing when I create choice. This I can do. I can ethically put you into a situation where you have more choice, right? Because it's so it's very rare though where we have this opportunity.
Right. Right.
Very, very powerful. I mean, when you really think of it though, from a personal freedom point of view, right? Okay, this is now, I said the because I'm using examples for coaches here now, but we want to apply this not only internally, but also in a more normal type of situation. You're dealing with friends, you're dealing with, co-workers, whatever, right? So yes, okay, they're being uncomfortable, awkward, stumbling, struggling to express. Okay, that's kind of benign. That's them really trying to solve a problem. But what if they are being idiotic, foolish, stupid, mean, nasty, aggressive, etc.? Same point. You can shift your expectations of how you respond and also put that out there to say, I'm not going to even make space for you to do this. I'm not interested. What you do is what you do. I don't have to respond to your labeling. Yeah, I don't have to. Your art, what you are doing now, it's nasty. I don't have to respond to that. I don't have to see it the same way you do. Yeah,
It's true.
I mean, their labeling might have nasty and rude, but really their bottom line labeling is control, manipulation. Yeah?
Yeah.
Once we start to shift our brain into this abstract modality of overview and this of labeling in abstract terms, like in art, shifts the expectations profoundly. Yeah.
True.
Not only of others, but of ourselves. We are changing our expectations of how we expect ourselves to react in the circumstance.
Right.
Yes.
True.
Negative emotionality is difficult. It's much more difficult to deal with. I mean, intentional negative.
Right.
This kind of where somebody's been awkward and stumbling, uncomfortable, like I said, oh, my art sucks. I'm primitive, that stuff. This isn't directed at you. It's directed internally. That's not that, it's fairly easy to deal with. But when it is specifically directed at somebody, this changes everything because there are many implications. If you don't react to it in some way, you also kind of condone it and encourage it. So there's a defensive mechanism that comes in. But we also have to understand, though, that if we are going to start in a defensive posture, you now start to engage in the dance of a fight. And this we do not want to do, because the moment you are fighting, you're fighting no matter how you're fighting, you're still fighting. Yes. So we want to basically the art of fighting without fighting. Yes.
Right.
We want to engage in that. You want to win a fight by not fighting it.
Yeah.
Yes. So when it comes to, negativity, whether it's specifically directed at you or not, if we can understand this, in other words, that I've seen this before many times, like, well, Beena has a story of this, innocent, somebody took her to some kind of a club thing. Yeah. I don't know if they just thought, okay, Beena needs this education.
Right.
So of course, one of the local Lotharios comes and starts trying to chat Beena up, right? And making all these suggestive comments and allusions and everything. You've experienced this, obviously, I would assume, in your life, right?
Yes.
But have you observed when somebody does this and the other person just doesn't get it?
Yes.
And has no idea what they're talking about?
Yes.
Typically, the Lothario will give up in disgust and say, bloody idiot, I'm wasting my time here, right? We can do that deliberately by shifting our expectational response. Yes, and projecting to say, I don't see what you're saying. You see it, you think you're being nasty, you think you're being rude, you think you're being bullying, whatever. But it just doesn't even penetrate or connect. It's like, I don't get it. And if I don't get it, it can't be anything.
Right.
Now, I don't get it, not because I'm unaware, because that's also dangerous in such instances, but because I deliberately couldn't care two hoots about your rubbish. You're just not part of my existence. In this, it's like you're totally wasting your time. You're being a fool. Right. That's it. End of story. And now they give up in disgust because, well, this is not working. In the same way, the Lothario abandoned Beena, abandon her. I'm wasting my time here. I utilized this also when I was hitchhiking once. I did a lot of hitchhiking as a kid, and really it's quite amazing. From about age 11, 12, I hitchhiked all over the damn show. And I was picked up by a guy, and he's playing with himself, and he starts masturbating in the car. I knew if I noticed it, I did notice it, but if I noticed it in a way that he knew I'd noticed it, now we're in that dance, right? So I carried on as if this was not happening. Not that I'm ignoring it, because I understood ignoring was going to the same way I'm dancing already, right? So I'm just not seeing it. I'm just not getting it. Eventually he pulled over and he went off, like a side of the road thing, and there were some trees, and he went to relieve himself in the trees. But because he was just like, this is not going anywhere. And then he came back and everything was fine and normal, and I went on the rest of my ride. Thank you very much. It's really powerful. So I'm saying, this is stuff that's very real, and we can use it. And I'd seen it happen with women, how they got rid of guys in this way. I learned from them. I really, really learned, in terms of completely negating that by not recognizing it. Yes.
Right.
It's very, very powerful. You change everything. And it's really fascinating how powerful this is and how it works. And I'm mentioning this very particularly in the context of dealing with negativity, because you mentioned that this is a big deal. And it is. I feel the same way, and this is something I work on very much, because I tend to react and I don't need to react. I'm too fast. Now I've learned to have that pause, and that makes a big difference, right? Yeah. So because once you start to react, it's too late. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And then you don't have that overview perspective, that pause. All right. How important is this ability in you to no problem uncomfortable sharings from others, to create that freedom of openness, which is so crucially important to everything and for release? Now, obviously, this question coming from the first one, we've sort of already discussed it. The answer is very obvious. But when you look at the second part here and you say, right, that other, what about how able am I to no problem what comes from the other inside? Now it takes on a whole different complexity, because this is how, for me, this particular, we are approaching it, right? Other is us, client is us. Actually, the start of the program says, the very first quote says, the client is always you. So now let's look at it in that context, because to me, yes, this is a multi-layered program. It's written on the surface for a coach, but really it's a spiritual program. Yeah. Because when you see the client as you, it becomes spiritual. And this is the way to look at this now, right?
Absolutely.
So when you think of this, how does this relate internally for you? Are you actually able to no problem the things that come up inside you?
I'm getting better and better, for sure. And that's been a big part of, I think, what's come out of Eckart's books for me, is finding different perspectives of how to do that in practical application. And that's been big, really, really big.
Wonderful. If I haven't said it before, I really not only admire but appreciate your insistence on application.
Yes.
That was a cool off. Yeah. Okay, nice. What am I doing? I'm not going there. What are you clicking on? Oh, I'm trying to go to the next slide. But oh, share in detail from inside how exactly you made space. We did hear this, right? It is that expectation is a very powerful way. We could say intent, yes, or mood, or atmosphere, or vibe, but to invert expectation and relabel stuff. That's really what you did with art, no?
Right.
You said, I'm not going to buy into your labeling categorization. No, I've got the other labeling. And so you said my expectations thus are different, and you reverse the expectations. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is the tree taken care of, by the way?
The tree that fell down is taken care of, and the new fence is up. We are now in the process of getting the tree that is still standing
Yeah, the teetering tree.
taken down, and that's a whole thing because it's in a weird spot, and in order for cranes to reach it, they're going to have like really, really, really long cranes, and so it's probably going to be a pricey endeavor. So we'll see what comes out of it.
Boo, boo,
But
boo, boo.
we've had several people come out and look at it, and they have all said,
Are the cranes the only option? Because I have seen lumberjacks who bring down trees. They don't topple them. They cut them,
"That's what
and
I
they.
that's what I was
Oh,
going to say." Is we've had several people come out, and they have all said that there is rot and termite damage at the bottom of the second tree standing as well, and so they've
not possible.
the concept of going up the tree rather than using a crane, but it just depends on whether the tree is stable enough to support a person
Yeah,
being up
yeah.
there.
Because sometimes even the rotten trees can be stable enough for that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, very interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, peculiar details. All right. The other housekeeping question I wanted to say is, I know you lost your art. You said, right, that you'd made.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Now, have you been making new art? Did you recover it? What's happening?
I didn't recover it. I have made one drawing that happened, but I haven't been back in to do more of it. I keep leaving my iPad up here. I haven't been back in to do more, but
Wow.
it's
So,
still
do you have a locator app on your iPad?
a locator app.
Yeah.
I would imagine maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I'm sure you can get one, and then you get on your phone, and it's connected to your phone or your computer, and you say, "Where's my thing?" And it.
No, I mean I know where it is. It's just
Oh,
for me, if the thing isn't right in front of me. I mean, I very much
what?
have what is that called? It's an ADHD thing of like object impermanence, where if it's not right in front of you, you're
Yeah,
not necessarily thinking about it.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
part
I have the same thing. It's like if it's not in my fridge, then I don't eat it.
right, right.
Yeah, it's too fascinating how that works.
Yes.
It's really, really interesting to me how stuff goes so quickly out of mind. Yeah,
Yes.
and I've developed various strategies to deal with that over time. But yeah, it's quite a peculiar thing. All right, describe how, from your own perspective, honesty, openness, and completely free sharing is huge for you. How it was a joy and a release, a freedom. Share how you felt at the time. Give details of your psychology, thinking, perspectives, beliefs, what was needed, etc. when this took place for you and you were in such a free sharing environment and interaction. So before you answer, the intent here obviously is to get inside this and to understand that if you remember how potent it was for you, you will understand and create the space needed for that to be so for the others, for somebody else, right? That just this understanding that if we have this awareness and memory, we can make space simply by holding that awareness, that memory. Yes. So I'm assuming there have been plenty times when you've shared, at least in our environment. I would hope so. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And every time you've done so, it was a big deal for me. Yeah. I mean, it was a joy to hear. Your sharings are just too incredibly magical. I feel you somewhat have the same thing as me. In that people say, yeah, but I never hear what's going on inside you. I never hear your secrets. Well, because I'm just free to share whatever is there.
Right.
So it's never a big deal, right? And because the queuing is missing to say, oh, I'm not sure I should tell you this. This is hard to share because I don't have any of this blah and fuss and bother with it. It just comes out as like a nothing. But that's my deeper inner stuff. It's like there, right? But you don't have to make a big deal out of it, right? We lack that big dealifying, I call it, right? We've already no problem the thing, so sharing is easy. Yes.
Right.
I mean, I can't imagine that you have much inside you that you have not shared, that maybe you could have shared, or in inverted commas should have shared. I don't see this, right? I don't think so at all. And this is important because I mention it because we do think differently. And I am taking this into account now. And I'm saying a we. Yes, obviously we aren't alike, yes, we are very different, but we are also alike in very significant ways. And to have a cognizance of the fact that we don't have these deep, dark secrets that we hold on to. I might not have told you this, but it's not because I don't want to. It's just because it wasn't pertinent or relevant. If it comes up, I'll share it with you. I have no problems. You want to find out, I'll tell you whatever you want to know. There's absolutely nothing I won't share. It all depends on the appropriateness and the question. I might not even think of it. I might not even know it. But if you ask the right question, oh, okay.
Right.
So, and this is very important to be aware of in this, that if we aren't aware that it's seen as somewhat inappropriate from others, or not even inappropriate, or as because sorry, because to them being open about everything is an impossibility. They think you must be hiding something. So you have to make that little extra effort to say, look, I just don't have this the same way other people. I'm sorry, but I don't. So it appears this way. And if you ask me, I'll tell you, but it doesn't come out like a big deal, and it may be disappointing. You have to sort of explain it a little bit to set them at ease. They still not won't necessarily believe it because it's so foreign to their minds. They cannot comprehend this. It's too fascinating. But, if you make the effort, at least you sort of make a halfway bridge, because otherwise you end up with an inadvertent perception that you are being disingenuous, dishonest, hiding, secretive, and that you're really good at it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, then they really oh, I get this quite regularly. I got to tell you, it's quite fascinating.
That's very interesting.
Being other has some responsibilities and onuses onto it. I mean, in a way, ADHD has some overlap with psychopathic tendencies,
Right.
but we have profound empathy. Yes. Our empathy can overwhelm us at times, even. Yes. Yeah. Which is, again, this painting behind me now, this spirit wave of empowerment coming to be. This is a big deal. It's a big deal that we have this inside us. We just got to call it up, right? Yeah. We're not that emotionally connected to our things. We're more intellectually connected. But I feel, somebody just says, oh, you're more intellectual than emotional. Oh, you got that wrong, buddy. Sorry. I mean, I have come so close to being overwhelmed by emotions so many times, that I have to live in the intellectual space. If I live in the emotional space, I'd be a mess. Yes. I mean, I feel what you feel so strongly. It can easily overwhelm me, and I can get sucked into you and become you. So strong is my empathy. Yeah. And I can lose myself. So, yeah. I sometimes feel this, and it leads to, potentially, excuse me. I am acutely aware of the dangers of that path of over empathy. I can get pulled into sadness, into depression. I refuse. I long ago saw the dangers of that slippery slope. And I said, no, I cannot afford to go there, which is where unrelenting positivity came from.
Right.
I had to be unrelenting positive to combat my severe empathy. Severe empathy.
Mm-hmm.
I feel too much. I see too much. It's something and this part of making space, this is what we're talking about here now. And like we were saying with the art, not getting pulled into that bubble of people's stuff. That's the skill that results.
Right.
But we don't want to overdo that either. We want to maintain some connectivity so that I do get where you're coming from. And I do feel you. I do hear you. It's very important. So it's a very, very fine and exquisite balance. And this is too part of our discernment. Like when I was writing the poem about the paintings, using them, I'm specifically looking to elucidate the painting in a poem. It's the empathy that I'm empathizing with the picture.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm just saying though that some people may look at us and say, well, you're a bit of a cold fish, but we aren't really, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Don't understand. They don't always see our emotionality because we can't afford to show it always. Yes.
Interesting.
Make sense?
It does. I'm not sure anybody has ever expressed that toward me. I tend
Well,
to
people, yeah. Oh,
I
go
tend
ahead.
to
Sorry.
be
Go ahead.
a pretty emotionally expressive person.
Oh, good. Okay. I don't see that side of you always because we are relating on a more intellectual level. And you have mentioned this before, and I do know it to be there. I just don't always. So if they're reacting with you or interacting with you in the same level that we are or same vibe, then they might say this. Because some people can't ever let go of their emotionality.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Whereas you can get into the space of pure understanding, pure discernment, pure awareness, which is a very powerful skill. It's the skill of immersion. Yes. So yeah, I mean, anybody who knows me a little more than just on this, will see that yes, I have lots of energy and emotion, but some people do have that perception of me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting. So I mentioned it. I said us, not that this is common for you, but more in the context that it could be a perception that could be inappropriately connected, particularly in this context of like holding things in secrets and all this. Yeah. And anybody who does know us knows that we're very free in our sharing. Yes.
Right.
Very powerful stuff. Very powerful stuff, Erica. Just self-awareness. No,
Mm-hmm.
it's very, very necessary to know the details of it and to try to be aware of ourselves from another's perspective.
Yep.
Yeah. This is what making space is, to have that separation and shift up, right? Describe how, from your own perspective, honesty, you read it rather, you read it. It's better, no?
Describe how, from your own perspective, honesty, openness, and completely free sharing. So we already did this one. Are we?
Then yeah. It's just huge. It's just huge. Yeah.
Yeah, completely free sharing is huge for you. How it was a joy and a release, a freedom. Share how you felt at the time. Give details of your psychology, thinking, perspectives, beliefs, and what was needed, etc. When this took place for you, and you were in such a free sharing environment and interaction. Okay, next one is, how critical is it to make sure we make space for joy and freedom of being when there is capital R release? When
Oh,
grief or shame or other deep emotions, what emotion and mood and perspectives can you hold which is not going into that space, which stays outside but yet is not insensitive?
so yeah. Oh, well, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking about the questions.
Ah,
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. What were you going to say?
we can take the same question here and say, oh, okay, we're listening to somebody sharing, for instance, grief or shame, or those. And typically there's especially with grief, right? Somebody sharing, oh, my mother died, whatever, and they expect you to commiserate.
Right.
But we don't need to, and we don't have to. We can share that there is a joy from your release, getting this out, releasing your grief, and therefore getting resolution. I'm particularly associating the joy in a very precise way to
Right.
say it doesn't have to be all grief. There's no end to it and all this, right? There is an end to it. There is a point to it. And you put the idea, I'm getting my grief is not something that I've got to do forever because my mother's dead. And some people think this, right? They don't have alternative options in their brain. When your mother dies, you got to express grief, and that's as far as it goes. They don't even think to that next step. But then you introduce this next step, and it all changes.
Right.
But in the same way, we can do this with negativity coming at us, right? Anger, spite, nastiness, whatever. Yeah. We can also start to bring in a different thing, right? I can bring in my joy that I'm not affected by your nonsense.
Right.
So, we can shift. In other words, we are deliberately making associations that are non-obvious, non-ordinary. Yes. So, when it comes to like grief, for instance, and I've done too much damn grief counseling, you can hear somebody, but not have that commiseration. So I can have earnestness. For instance, the last part there, right? When someone is sharing grief or shame or other deep emotions, what emotion and mood and perspective can you hold which is not going into that space, which stays outside, but yet is not insensitive? Earnestness is absolutely number one. Right? Earnestness with sincerity added. Now, to me, they go together. But earnestness, sincerity, care, but specifically also, I am taking care. Part of my mood is I don't want to condone commiseration. So this is a kind of a super sensibility that I'm putting in there specifically, that yes, I'm listening to you. You've got to go through it. I sort of just have to be patient and wait. But if you're going to get into indulging in this, then you're going to get a thing come up from me, not cool.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I'm not displaying that right now. I'm just being earnest. I'm just listening. I'm letting the process unfold. I'm being patient. So patience, obviously very powerful here when combined with this earnestness, the sincerity, and the caring. I'm caring that you go through it, not that you do it.
Right.
I'm caring that you get release. So it's very nuanced. Yes. I'm caring that you get released, not that you sobbing and all this, right? This is okay. I've got to endure this. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
And they can see me say, well, they just got to be there, and they're not suffering. They're forbearing. They're not saying stop it. I'm just enduring, and that's it. Because okay, it's appropriate, but it's only going to be appropriate for a certain amount of time. Depending on your internal situation. So yeah, it's very, very interesting how the subtlety of what's going on inside of us is communicated. Yes. And as initially they may be very immersed in their grief, and they're so in the bubble they don't even notice you. But as that sobbing gets, after a little while, you start kind of looking around. You've seen this in children, right? Yeah, they cry, and then they'll look around to see how their crying is affecting others. And people do the same thing. They might not quite be as blatant and obvious about it, but they do the same thing. That's when it all starts to change.
Right.
Oh, I'm expected to do something else. Oh, what is this expectation? The expectation is to get resolve, to get release, to get ease, to get over this, to move on. And then you can start to introduce new perspectives, transition, whatever. But this applies, like I said, to negative emotions also, that we don't have to respond in the usual ways. Yes.
Right.
Very powerful. It's so nuanced though. I find it very hard to communicate this because it's so nuanced.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, you get what I'm saying here, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to make really sure because it's such a tricky, difficult point. But it's so important, and it's a power point. Yes, I mean this gives us incredible power, and this is why I don't typically want to share this with everybody,
Right.
because if you use this inappropriately, you can manipulate like crazy, right? So this requires the utmost stringent ethics,
Mhm.
but it's also just magically powerful. Yes.
Right.
So we were discussing this a little bit here, to look at what is the difference between manipulation and leadership
Right.
or guiding,
Right.
mentoring, how coaching, how are these not just variations of manipulation?
Hmm.
Yeah. So sharing for me is the way we can overcome that. Yes, by sharing. I share. You take it whichever way you want to. I'm sharing options, choices. I'm sharing lack of expectation. So this is how I can satisfy the ethics of presenting information I think is valuable. I present it as an option, as a choice, right? So that I don't manipulate. Now, there is ethical manipulation.
Hmm.
Yes, that's, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's very situational specific, but it does exist. Yes. Exist. All right. So this point, though, can you think now? I'll add in a bonus Erica specific question here. Can you think of circumstances or situations going forward or in the past, either way, in which what we have been discussing will be or would have been extremely useful and valuable?
I, oh boy. Um, I think in a way, um, that is kind of what I don't want to say I was trying to do. I don't think this was a deliberate thing, but looking back, I think that was something that I was kind of unintentionally trying to utilize with my mom and grandma as a kid. Um, just from sort of a survival standpoint, I was kind of trying to ethically manipulate the situation,
Yes,
sort of
yes.
smooth things over, make everything okay. Um, and I've thought about that a lot with how I think even though I didn't have the skills and the real understanding of what was happening at that point, um, even just the intent of sort of trying to um, I, I don't even know the right words to say. I I think as a kid I had an intent to make things resolved between the two of them
Yeah.
in a tangential way is maybe sort of what I'm trying to say. I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
exactly sure how to express what I'm trying to say with this, but it was obvious to me that whatever was happening with the two of them wasn't something that I could directly come at in terms of
Mm.
finding this.
Correct. You had to step outside the circle. Absolutely.
It
Yeah.
had to be done in that sort of ethical manipulation way.
Yes.
You kind of have to see this as your own solution, but you wouldn't, or not a
Correct.
solution, but I don't know. I'm not there. There's ideas floating around that I'm not.
Had to feel like they came to it through
Yeah,
their own doings. Yeah.
I've thought a lot about how
Yeah.
different that situation. I mean, just it's just interesting to me that I was sort of trying to do those things without really having any
Correct.
knowledge or
Yeah.
understanding of the finer strategy of doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, And I think, I just find that interesting. All that
Yes.
situation was just an interesting one for me, for all of us involved. But in the future, I mean, I guess the most obvious example that comes to mind for me is just what you have talked about many times in this course and in other courses of boy, words are not coming to my mind right now. I mean, everything that this is talking about making space, to me, that is sort of an ethical manipulation in a way of
Exactly.
saying, indicating or implying you are more than what you think you are.
Exactly.
That sort of ethical manipulation helps another person. And it's not that it's not true, it is true, but they don't necessarily believe it to be true. So when you set up that kind of environment, it allows them to be more than, it allows them to be what they are and who they are, which for them is more than they think they are.
In other words, we are presenting an option which always was an option, but they weren't aware that it was an option. Yeah. And that to me is ethically justifiable. Right? Especially when it's a positive option. I mean, they of course have the option to do horrid negative things.
Right.
And you can make them aware of the, but that's not. So yeah, that was actually in the end most wonderfully expressed. All right, so I want to say something about when you were a child. Get out of this. I can look at you somewhere. When you were a child, you were doing things that you kind of knew to do. Yes, like this, that you knew you had to come tangentially. Say it, please.
Tangentially.
Tangentially. There you go. Tangentially. Yes, exactly. You knew that there was this necessity for this, right? Because because you were young and all of this, if you'd come at it directly, it would have caused too much problems. They wouldn't have listened. They would have shut it down because, well, you're too young to have sense and all of this stuff, right? You would have confronted all those conventionalities. Yes, that would have been problematic. So coming at it tangentially, you knew was your capital D diplomacy tool, right? And this is really, really, really potent understanding. What I want to take this as an example of something else to illustrate. I want to bring in a whole other perspective that helps for us to understand ourselves. I don't know if you've seen the posts where they take, it's like a globe that's cut out in patterns, right? Like a paper thing, and and then they hold it with a light, and then it shines underneath it, and then it puts a grid, like a shadow, a square grid, shadow grid on the flat, right? And this is to illustrate 4D to 3D. Yes, not 3 to 2, but 4 to 3. Yes.
Okay.
Right. You know what I'm talking about now, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. Yes. And you can probably look it up. I think if you do 4D to 3D illustration, something like this, you'll get something that shows this. So basically, what a better way to describe to do this would be to take that grid pattern, right, which is actually it's like more like if you were to have it with a bit of relief to it, right, a relief grid, just black lines, but the black lines are like little walls standing out, right, like a maze kind of thing, but just grid. And you took that flat and you rolled it up into a ball. Yes. And the spaces between the walls are cut out. And you hold that to the light. It's going to, and you hold it in the right way, the shadow pattern will now give that to you. Okay. So this is the understanding, though, that perspective and light and how we perceive things aren't necessarily how they actually are. Yes, so that's the whole idea here. And when you get into all of those, when we were doing the physics stuff, right, with the 11 dimensions, and you get into where they're saying the shapes, the toroidal, and they have all these different shapes for the different dimensions. Now, this is what it is. We perceive that flat, even though it's 3-dimensional flat, we perceive it basically out, but yet in actuality, it's rolled up. Yes. Now, the key point I want to make here is, and I never really see this connectivity, although it's implied, is that we can do the same with time.
Right.
Now, you say, oh my goodness, my time is linear, but I've rolled it up into a ball. What in the hell now? Plus, it's not a circle, but a ball, which is different, right? A circle would be, okay, you're looping around, but a ball, which implies suddenly that the time can go in any which way. And you can jump from one side to the other. Yes. Now, because we are still perceiving it linearly, we go. But just because we perceive something doesn't mean that's what it actually is. Right? So when we do encounter jumps outside of time, how is this possible? Right? Because in actuality, it's existing as a ball, and really it's a dot, and it's all simultaneous. We are simply choosing to experience that linearly because it's the easiest. Right? And it makes more sense. Plus, when we look at our agenda of our soul, spirit, universe agenda of enhancing and developing awareness, we say you need to go through this yourself. You can't just jump to the end, because then you're not going to have the application. You're not going to really understand it. So the point of the exercise is to go through it so that you consciously know it, not just have the answers. We had the answers before and it didn't really help us.
Right.
Yes. So we need to have them consciously and deliberately. Now, though, it explains how we know stuff that we shouldn't know. Right? Like when you were a child, I had the same thing. Yes, I knew stuff that I had no business knowing. You knew about this tangential approach to that. You knew it. You knew the appropriateness of it. And when you really unravel that, this I would absolutely recommend. And under the heading of memorable events and significant experiences, and I've written in detail about doing this, to write out that in detail with the me of now and me of then perspectives, right? You are doing so that you want the me of then to remember more than the me of now thinks it knows, and discover and say, oh, I forgot about that. Plus, you are understanding it and applying the words, the awareness, the discernment, the understanding of me of now. It's going to be incredible for you, because you are going to realize how me of then was much more aware and sophisticated than me of then realized. And because me of then did not have the language of conceptuality in which to elucidate their moreness.
Right.
It is profound to realize that we knew stuff as a kid, and all we lacked was the ability to express it, but we knew it. Plus, sometimes we were unable to even express it. We knew something was there, it was very vague, because the conception was not in our language specifically. The conception was there in us as a vague sort of a conception, but we need the specific words. Context, the word context for me was like that. I understood context, but when the actual word came, it was like a spiritual experience. It was actually a visual involved with it as well. A vague visual, but I still remember it like a shape emerging out of kind of darkness. And so it was very powerful. I don't have many visual experiences. That was one of the few. So that's why it stood out and remembered. But still, now we see the power of the language of conceptuality. It allows us to consciously, deliberately utilize and implement and apply what we know, but do so with absolutely much more ability to make it effective. Yes? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you have that conscious understanding, we can be so much more deliberate and effective. Yes? Yeah. So I just really want to emphasize this point about time, and to really understand this, and also that, we sometimes can pull from the future as well. Yes? Yeah. Very, very, very interesting to me. Any of that resonate and pick up and touch on anything inside you?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I have had that experience, I think, my whole life of um, knowing things beyond any particular reason to, I guess.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, our brains like to be logical and sensible. and we don't want to be foolish. We have a kibosh on foolishness, right? And so the reason I mentioned this about the ball and understanding time is so that we have a reason, a rationale for understanding this, which allows us to utilize it more and not put it down to, it can't be right. It can't be. So you dismiss it because, well, it can't be. It's foolishness. Right? It's wishful thinking, maybe. Oh, no, there's a very realness to it. Yes. So this is very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. But we can't lose our overall intent, which is development, enhancement of awareness. And so, because if you're going to now look to subvert that, then you're going to work against yourself, right?
Right.
And I find when it comes to our ethics as well, to understand that if we are in attunement and specifically in alignment with universal intent, this changes much of our ethical considerations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you understand what it's about, awareness, sometimes what you wouldn't ordinarily do is okay to do in that context.
Right.
Yeah, it's very powerful, very, very powerful to understand. You know, when I look at all the tools and techniques and methodologies the universe uses, it's like it uses everything. It doesn't care. Its only objective is to get you to learn. How you learn doesn't really matter. You can learn the hard way or the easy way. It doesn't care. It will use whatever. Now, it is ethical in this, that it will first give you the nice options. But if you don't learn, boy, it's going to bring it on to you, and it's going to bring that stick. Yes. It will to force you to learn one way or the bloody other, you know. Now, unfortunately, we have this great capacity for suffering. So, but still, it's your choice, you know. And that's the thing. I think it takes people in ordinate suffering sometimes to realize they have choice. It's a sad business, sad business. What you thinking, Erica? What you thinking? I feel like I've triggered a tangential awareness of some kind.
Oh, I don't know. It's possible that it's stirring in there, but nothing in particular. I'm just listening.
Okay. Okay. You know, I see sometimes when stuff grabs somebody, that their attention gets a little bit diluted sometimes, you know, because the inside of them is like, oh, wow, and they're starting to put all the stuff together, right? All the connections, all the extrapolations, all the inferences. Yeah. Wonderful, 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 Erica. Oh, these are quotes. All right. Always be fully aware of what you're communicating with your awareness. It's your most powerful tool, even without a single word spoken, especially what is deliberately held in the forefront of awareness. From Philosophies of the Facilitators. Actually, you know, this was something, I'm not coming at things. Yes, I share with you very much, but not deliberately so. I got into this with Sue a little bit because she was interested in doing things from, or understanding things from a facilitation point of view.
Right.
You know, I mean, because she does do and put on her own things. So I did share this with her, you know, the philosophy of facilitation and the mindset, and there's a lot there. It's very fascinating stuff. Always trust the student, which is us. Trust them to ask when they don't know. Do you trust yourself to ask yourself when you don't know?
Yeah, I do.
I think so. If they don't or feel they can't, then you have not done your job. Right? It's not necessarily that they do ask, but that they need to feel that they can, right? Yeah. That's very good. I like this scenery.
Me too.
You know, I think this is actually a screenshot from a game.
Looks like it. Yeah.
I had great fun. You know, part of my art and my curation skills, perception, discernment, awareness skills, I put into much practice doing photography in game. Right? You know, like this. But of course, when you're going to take a screenshot, you can just hit the screenshot key anytime. But of course, if you're doing it as photography, you've got to position yourself. You've got to see where the light is and frame it. It's taking photographs. It's the same thing. And I have thousands. I mean, I don't know, probably, no, not thousands, tens of thousands of screenshots, by the way. I mean, I really made an effort to like basically take a picture of every corner of that whole game world, which is quite a feat, by the way. But again, you know, when you do things, part of, for me, capital P practice is immersion into multiplicity. Because when you do things over and over and over and over again, you start to see things that you cannot see without massive quantity.
Right.
Right. And that's a very, 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 very powerful thing. And like using the programs, you know, for the art creation. Yes, there's a lot of input involved, and that's a major part of it, obviously. And then the curation is the other part. But understanding how the program works, this most people are not ever going to see because they don't do enough quantity to be able to discern that. And this is a breakthrough. When you start to really get how it works, now you can manipulate it to get what you want. And this is the art of it. So it's very powerful. It's very, very, very powerful. Big deal stuff. Big deal stuff. All right. We've made space for practice. We add to this by making space for understanding, for recognition, for realization, for self-awareness, for figuring things out, for coming to clarity by oneself. This is essential. We make space for the other to come to their own understandings, conclusions, resolutions, and more. This is a major shift. We have to make space for this new paradigm of problem solving. In that exploration of yours in capital P practice, you are making space for coming to understanding of your own accord. Now, two ways we can come to understand. We can consciously think it through to the end, right?
Okay.
And not just two ways, multiple ways. And we can let things come up from inside of ourselves. We can let our other aspects figure it out for themselves.
Right.
And this, I feel, is absolutely critical and it's part of our creativity because our aspects will surprise us.
True.
Yes. And this is very key. This is very, very key. So, you know, in like writing those poems from the art, or you know, you can do it from any input, really. You know, prompts. I used to, I still get the emails, but I would respond to it, a site called 50 words, first 50 words. And they would send you 50 words and then write a story from there. I can do this, no problem. But when you apply it internally, this is very valuable. When you deliberately look to access your own selves and have them come to their own understandings, conclusions, resolutions, and more. This is really potent, where we bypass the deliberative thinking through to the end part of ourselves, because that can be limited.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. We do this. This is our intent because we aim to provide real and lasting help, assistance, resolution. The only way this occurs is if the other learns for themselves, learns how to problem solve, learns that if they simply continue to sort and share and explore, then matters come together and clarity is obtained. Persistence and perseverance are key. And when we do this with the totality of ourselves and understand that the self is a totality, changes everything. Yes?
Yeah.
Very, very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. Why are my ribbons offset?
I don't know.
See, they're not one above each other. I'm happy that they are, but it just struck me. It's rather interesting. All right.
Is it the ribbon?
What's that?
Looked like the ribbons were in the same spot, but the ball thing was over to the left on the bottom.
Yeah, maybe. Interesting. Yeah, could be.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe.
Yeah, look at the yellow line on the top. You can see it come up through the middle of the top one when I move it, right? You see? Fascinating. It still looks like the ribbon is also a little bit off center, but I'm not going to mess with it now. So, optical illusion. Wow. We make space for our client to be different, We make space for ourselves, our inner selves, our aspects to be different. This, I cannot emphasize enough how crucial this is, to have the largesse of spirit, the openness of being, to say, I can have spaces and beings inside me who are different to what I think is the most ideal and sensible, who can simply be different because I celebrate difference even within myself.
Right.
It's one thing to celebrate the difference of another. Well, because they're over there, and I can get it at a distance. It doesn't really affect me personally. I can view it, dispassionately. Yes.
Right.
But to have it internal, that's a different story. Yes. So also we think that if we have divergence internally, this makes us somehow broken, wrong, crazy, etc. That's the classical definition of it. But it's only when yourselves are not in attunement and working in harmony, they don't understand collaboration, when they fight with each other, when they do not celebrate difference, when they do, now you've got the magic of variety inside you. Yes.
True.
I mean, very simple point that I'm mentioning in a way, but man, it's profoundly life-changing, is it not? To have eternal celebration of difference.
Mm-hmm.
Big point. We make space for our client or another to be different. This is the core, the crux, and the heart of what we make space for. I cannot emphasize this enough when it comes to other people. Yes, of course it applies. But when we make space for another to be different, how often in people's lives do they get this opportunity? Just taken from your own experience, right? How often do you get the opportunity where there is space made for you to be different? Not to act different, to be. Yes, very big difference. Very big difference. Hello back, Beena. This is the core, the crux, and the heart of what we make space for. An environment, a mood, an interactivity, a responsiveness, connection, and atmosphere where they can be different, including not being bothered by flies. Where everything is possible and they can be in ways they normally cannot. And this not only includes sharing and releasing, but also being more. We make space not only for the release of what's problematic, but also make space for release of moreness, possibility, and especially for new ways of being and new ways of living. I cannot emphasize this enough. We make space not only for release of what's problematic. That's basically the small step 1 out of step 1,000. Right. That's a tiny part. It's just like releasing the chock from the wheel. Yeah. But also make space for release of moreness, possibility, and especially we make space for release of ways of being and make space for release of new ways of living. We make space for the release of limitations and restrictions of moreness. Do you, Erica Jayne, feel that you have made space for the release of your moreness, and also that you've removed the limitations and restrictions for that moreness to come?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's still a practice for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's still in process, and it's a process and a progress, but yes, it is absolutely there. I see it on a day, every time we interact, I see this. It's really profound. That's why I asked about the art. I really would love to see more art from you. Yes. I was, thinking it, and I meant to say it also, that I feel like I'm not, I'm missing your art. I'm not seeing it. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. I'm feeling its absence. All right. Yes. Right. So we are at the end. We're going to do the recap next time. The recap is very cool, by the way. I'm just going to read through these real quick, just from a finality point of view. How often do you deliberately make space for questions? You do this all the time. Why or why not? Well, because you like doing it and it's cool. Is it important that questions are actually asked, or just that there's the feeling and knowledge that they can be asked? Both. Yes. And you do this. You make space for questions internally and externally. And in your expectation unhooking, right? And the inversion of expectations when you apply it yourself. you have now opened the door for questions to emerge, to bubble out, to come from elsewhere, to just jump at you, yes? And not only questions, but answers, solutions, resolutions, explorations, starting points, portals, yes? Yeah, all of that comes from unhooking from the expectations. Explain in detail the problems with Band-Aid helping. All right, we've gone into this, short term. All right, we know this. This is obvious stuff, right? What all is needed for real and lasting help? Well, Jayne knows this and she applies it daily. Application. Without application, all meaningless, right? And practice. It's not only application, because I can apply the new skill, but if I don't practice it, it goes nowhere. Because a new skill, when you start to learn it, is very different from a practice skill. If you think you know the skill from that first couple of applications, well, I'm sorry, I got news for you. If you have no idea what you are missing by not finishing the skill by practicing it. The end result is completely different, yes? But we won't necessarily see it because it can sometimes be incremental and slow. But you'll only notice it when you get far enough down that the contrast to where you're at in the beginning is profound, correct? But unless you go far enough, that difference is not so big. So you have to persist until it's a big difference. Very, very important part to understand with practice, that as long as there's progression, keep going, because you are that progression, even though it's incremental, it takes you further and further away until it comes a point, when they're closer, all right, not much, but there comes a point where the difference becomes profound, yes? Yeah, between what you've now newly learned and what you used to think you knew. Write out in detail what the typical expectations are of others when it comes to interactions of sharing and release. Then write out in detail what could happen, what could take place, how they could be, how they can be, which will not be the usual, will be surprising, will be more. And this is what you've been doing with yourself. Yes? You've been practicing this to have expectations of moreness, expectations of surprise, expectations of inspiration, imagination, jumping the barrel. And this is what Beena and I are, applying. We just, because of the APIS group, they're asking for this. Okay, we have the skills already. Here we go. It's like no problem for us, but it's still fun to do, right? And to see. And it's really, really potent and valuable. So this is very magical. I am keen, before we'll start here next time on slide 60. It's been a week of 60, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
We got 60,000 people in the group, 60 centuries of living, and so on. So yeah, all sorts of 60s have come into the process. Yeah. I'm not sure centuries, but it certainly feels like it.
I was going to say 60 centuries. You're quite a age there.
I feel that way sometimes. I feel that way. I really do. All right, 60 decades maybe.
There you go.
Yeah. But it's a long time, because I live so intensely. So it easily translates into that. Probably 60 decades would be accurate. Because I live by the minute, not by the hour or by the day or by the week or month. Most people live by the year even. They count their life changes. No, bloody hell, no. Dang it. Not even day. They live by the minute. Anyway, so I am keen, just before we get into the recap, which is going to be really fun to do. These recaps are quite powerful. They were quite a lot to do, by the way, but I found them quite worthwhile. Just to maybe write out an overview perspective of making space for next time, please. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be very cool. What it means to you, how it connects to you, how you intend to use it, what also. Particularly, I want to ask, what revelations came to you by, that's kind of new, that's kind of useful. I never really thought of that before, right? And to put those down and bring them into use, because those are the ones that we tend to need to practice and entrench, the stuff that's new, that's surprising. Yeah,
I like it.
Wonderful. All right. It's time, unfortunately, but it has to be. Sad realities of life.
Yes. Oh, shoot.
Yeah, it is. I really enjoy what we do. I change every time. I change, Erica. Change. I feel that. Wow. That's a watch that has an arm attached to it.
Nice.
It's so huge. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Ah, brilliant. Anything other than goodbye, Beena?
Oh, I just missed that last time it happened too, and this time again. So it was like, I was not willing to. It was not intentional, but somehow it was because I was keen to hear more from you. That what you were actually reading in those books. I was uh, I was thinking about what we shared before these two sessions. That was really profound because the illusion of separateness and the understanding of connectedness is so huge, and this understanding in the relevance with the time. I don't know how to actually articulate that, but it is in my notes. I'm just writing about this to actually make it more understandable for me. Because whenever I read in a scripture, okay, I read only Quran so far, and the way they describe time, it's very very interesting for me because it's a big huge deal, and very specifically they mentioned that how time is moving in a different way and different speed at different speed in at some place, and time, yes, also I don't know how to say that, but it's the how to time pass on a different speed in some different places, not only on planets, other planets, but also in the same planet.
Right.
That was really interesting. And then when you say that when we connect, when we feel connected with our with everything together, then things happened. That was somehow, that was the uh, takeaway, my takeaway on that. I read somewhere there was a guy in Pakistan or India subcontinent, okay, whose name was I think Shamsuddin, something, and he start meditating, just taking sitting back with the tree, and the meditation. Then when he started, the meditation was all about connectedness.
Okay.
And after a time when he was completely immersed into his meditation, the whole tree become alive, and the trees or and the leaves also become alive as an independent being.
Wow.
Beena, I don't want to interrupt you, but I also don't want to inconvenience Erica. You have a bit of time to listen to the rest of Erica Beena's story. You got to go.
I have a few minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So
Sorry, please.
that was, I'm searching for that story because that whole meditation was about connectedness, and it
Ah,
was not for the sake of showing some miracle. It happens organically because he was so connected with that tree and
Yeah.
the earth also. And I was like, wow. So okay, it just your sharing reminds me of that. I'm searching for that story. So when I will find that, I will definitely share with you.
Awesome.
okay.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
There's been, I was
Wonderful.
saying earlier, there's been so much coming from everything I'm reading, and lots of connectedness to Wave Impeccability and other books I've read. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's really it's good stuff.
Do you feel, at least I feel this, that your receptivity to the books is a function of making space?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
You have the ability to make space for them, and it's happens organically, but also to a large extent deliberately too. Wonderful. Wonderful. It's a good application of understanding making space. Yes, like the people who didn't get Eckhart, they weren't able to make space for it. You are able to make space, and look at the range and variety you are able to make space for.
Mm-hmm.
All of it
What
you got profoundness out of, the whole range. Doesn't matter what it is you get. And this to me is one of the joys, really the joys of Way of Impeccability, that we are able to make space to enjoy and get value out of pretty much anything and everything. It's an incredible shift of being. It's an
Mm-hmm.
incredible shift of being. We have to also understand that it's a result of us, not inherently in the things themselves. We may just think, wow, I'm having this good run of books. There's
Right.
nothing to do with that. It's got to do with you changing. Not that you're lucky in getting all these wonderful books. No,
Yeah.
no. Magical, magical, magical. All right, Erica Jayne. See you on Thursday. I look forward to it. See you then.
Okay, sounds good. Me too.
Yes,
Yes.
wonderful.
You
Bye
both.
bye, Erica.
Please.
Bye bye, bye bye, bye bye.
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 Almost.